So let's talk Wanderer. It's a game that I've seen some people go so far as to say is a VR must play, an amazing something. Look, I can't bring myself to take these people seriously. It's a troubled game, to say the least, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's just talk a bit about what the game actually is. You find yourself in a post-apocalyptic Earth at the end of time. A pair of hands with little to do except fiddle with things in the environment while people monologue in your general direction. I think one of the things that hit me in the first couple of areas is just how okay the environment design is. I'm not sure how much of this was the result of the game being designed primarily for the PS3, but the sound design is really honestly lacking. So many of the things that really immerse you into the environment, a lot of layered background sounds, just really aren't there both here and in a number of future environments. Objects that you pick up just don't really have any weight or sound to them most of the time. Sometimes they'll satisfyingly clink around in the environment, but generally they just make no sound at all. And that's very alienating and weird, and it doesn't help that the controls feel a good few generations behind the general curve of VR. Grabbing things is really awkward, as the game entirely prioritizes the direction that you're pointing and grabs things from that instead of actually paying attention to what your hand is doing. I think this, again, might be a concession to the fact that it was designed for the PS3, which doesn't have more advanced controllers like the Quest or Index would. It's kind of like the worst possible version of Alex's gravity gloves, where you can only awkwardly point at things which then teleport and get glued in your hands, and there's a very limited ability to reorient the things by grabbing them, because you kind of just grab onto various hard points of the object. It just makes everything feel weirdly artificial. I would almost have to applaud it for how it seems to invent problems for grabbing things in VR, something that basically every other game seems to get exactly right. So, anyways, I live in the land of tangents. Getting back in point, after traveling through the Savage Lands, you end up at a rundown apartment where there is a watch that will just not shut up, which helps you travel through time. Yes, this is a time travel game, but before I want to talk about that, I just want to go on one other short tangent. It won't be that long. The talking watch, right? It just talks through everything, and given the amount of NPCs that you interact with throughout the game, it's really frustrating how often the watch talks over them, or even various actors in the environment seem to talk over one another. This isn't a problem unique to VR, but it is frustrating in every game you encounter it, and here you encounter it quite frequently. I almost never was able to pay attention to what people were talking to because people were constantly talking over one another.
Wonderful. All right. Now, unfortunately, my mind went once more. Or at least get them lights on. A water-based, rifle. No.
Anyways, so let's get back to it one more time. So the whole point is that you're able to traverse time through what the game calls objects of antiquity. Essentially, these are fetishes which tether you to someone else at some point in time, allowing you to control their body, so you aren't physically traveling through time yourself. The plot past this point is not good. It's essentially two dudes discover time travel. One thinks humanity is like doomed and stuff and should just die so that the planet is gooder, and the other one's like, nah, it'll be fine, humanity's good and stuff, they'll like figure something out, I don't know, hope or something, general concepts of positivity. Look, there are other developments, but they don't make any much more sense of all of this, and all you need to do is look at the way that evil McSupervillain keeps sending people back in time to kill your avatars, which makes sense on paper, right? It seems like a reasonable way to stymie the protagonist, until you realize that it's impossible to actually kill these avatars, because when you do so, it triggers a response that just kicks the user out of their body and allows them to go back again, because the timeline can't change that significantly. You would think that one of the people who developed this technology would know that and understand the futility of attempting to send people back to kill these avatars. But no, that doesn't happen. And while I understand that this is a thing done for the sake of the convenience of gameplay predominantly, I think that still doesn't mean that you couldn't have written around it. I mean, just think about it. Wouldn't it have made a lot more sense for this evil McSupervillain to, like, be trying to trap these avatars in ways that would stop them from being able to progress in whatever it is they're attempting to do? And wouldn't that make the perfect way to add additional puzzles to your puzzle game about solving puzzles? Seems to make perfect sense, both in terms of the narrative and gameplay. But that isn't what happens, so, you know, great. The plot just makes very little sense. And let's just get into the actual gameplay, because I don't want to talk about the plot. The more that you try and think about the plot of this game, the more it hurts your brain. It's not good for your brain to think about this game, and that's not good. So let's talk about the actual gameplay, because that hurts my brain marginally less. I mentioned Wanderer in my review of I Expect You to Die last week, and I really think that playing those two games in succession really highlighted to me why the traditional point-and-click adventure genre died. Because I Expect You to Die, each puzzle is unique, the stakes of the plot were clearer, and the puzzles were filled with a lot more genuine discovery and the feeling that you were improvising your way through the world on your own instead of just finding the next thing that you need to rub somewhere on the environment to progress. Which unfortunately is mostly what Wanderer is. Trying to figure out the tool that the developer thought would solve the next puzzle. I think the term moon logic fits perfectly into this game because so many puzzles only make sense if you already know the solution. A good example is early on when you need to find a way to raise several pedestals in a Mayan ruin. To do this, you need to take a bow and shoot a number of stone snake carvings, which makes them explode for some reason. I was stuck here for a pretty good bit because unprompted, this makes absolutely no sense. And there are many other things in the environment that seemingly should have been the solution. But no, I just didn't think the same thing as the developer at the moment they came up with this puzzle, so I was thoroughly stuck. And this isn't, again, even an unsolvable problem. Show something happening in the environment first that demonstrates that these statues are incredibly brittle and only require small impacts to destroy. Then the player can easily put together these two things, that they have something which can cause small impacts and that these statues are easily destroyed. Easy solution, but it isn't there. So instead, I just got stuck for a good while. Likewise, the number of scenes available to you at any given point in time exasperates the finding a thing to rub on another thing problem, because it's difficult to know what item you're going to need in the scene next, and very often, even if you do know the next item that you need to progress a scene, you're typically going to then need another item after that. So you're going to go into a scene, you're going to go load back to the hub world to get the next thing, and then you're going to go back into the scene, you're going to use that item, and then you're going to find that you need another item. So it's loading screen, loading screen, loading screen, loading screen. It's really frustrating. It's not particularly well designed. I really would have preferred some other kind of a system where you maybe had some sort of common reservoir of these tools to pull from at any given point in time. But whatever, it's really frustrating, a lot of this. And it's almost like, you know, old adventure games just had big inventories which you could carry around all this stuff at once to solve a lot of these problems. It's almost like a lot of older games already resolved these issues. It's almost like that. I'm sorry, I'm being way meaner to this game than it deserves, but it really, really frustrated me. Okay, anyways, let's get back on it. A lot of the puzzles that are here are also not very good. And when I say puzzles, I mean genuine puzzles. There are like some gear puzzles and some dial puzzles, and there's this like a light board puzzle thing. It's sort of like a kind of minesweeper almost, and you can tell that they were pretty proud of this one because they really overuse it towards the end of the game, and I don't think that is a really good thing either. And the fact that all of these puzzles get repeated, as a matter of fact, is just something I don't care much for, because it just shows that there weren't a tremendous number of good ideas to put in for a game this long. And I will say that usually, when the puzzle got repeated, it was because the first time it was to introduce the puzzle, and then the second or third time would be having you solve the puzzle under some kind of time pressure, some sort of ticking clock that you're going to die if you don't solve it in, right? Which, I mean, that's mostly fine, but again, I still maybe would have just appreciated having to solve the puzzles under pressure each time, but whatever, that's like a personal preference thing, I'll admit. But anyways, my whole point is that to bring it back to I Expect You to Die again, that game might have been a fifth the runtime of Wanderer, but every puzzle was snappy, unique, and fun. And despite Wanderer being 5 times as long, it is far from 5 times as good. That isn't even getting into one of the most frustrating aspects about this title, which was just how often it broke, or other problems prevented me from solving puzzles without any real indication as to why. So the first time, a little bit of a backstory. I initially bought this game a couple weeks ago, but then only came back to it recently to finish it for this review. When I reloaded my save, I found that I was locked out from progress, as one of the switches you need to pull to interact with a puzzle was just broken and wouldn't work. So that was reload number 1. There seem to be, in general, a lot of problems with you reloading a save either in the middle of a puzzle or in some state where a puzzle is partially solved. And so many of these just seem to make you need to reload. And that brings me to the second reload, where you travel through time, like I said, by sticking these items into your watch. But one of the times I came back and the item just got stuck in the animation of going into the watch, and I couldn't fix it even with reloading. So that was going back to the checkpoint for the second time. And I will say that there is a pretty generous checkpoint system where you can reload back to a recently solved puzzle. However, this isn't without problems, because of course not only will you lose all the progress on the puzzle that you're presently solving, but you can also kind of make some sort of progression on puzzles that you haven't found yet by solving other little sub-objectives. And of course, if you need to load back to a checkpoint, all of that progress will be completely re-rolled, and you'll have to do it all over again each time that you need to solve for the subsequent puzzles, and it's just really frustrating. Anyways, so after that, an item fell through a cabinet and wouldn't reset to its default position, which is what usually happens when items, say, fall out of windows. So anyways, that was reload number 3. And then the last time might have been my fault. I'm honestly not sure. I went back and looked at the footage because I had footage of this puzzle when it seemed to have broke, and it really seems like the puzzle was just broken. And the short version is that you need a number of fuses to route electricity to on this grid thing in a set of colored fuses. And the first time I went to solve the puzzle, the amount of fuses I needed just were not there. Did I accidentally throw one of these fuses halfway across the room? Not in the footage I have. It's possible, I guess, but I searched this place up and down and I could not find the fuse I needed. I felt like I was going crazy because I even looked up guides how to solve this puzzle and people just had all of the pieces that they needed right off the bat. I felt like I was going insane. So anyways, I just reloaded to see if something had gone wrong here, and yes, that was absolutely what had happened, because within seconds of reloading I was just like, okay, bop, 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 the puzzle's done. Whether the game did not spawn the puzzle piece or whether I yeeted the puzzle piece across the room, I have no clue, But regardless, either of those are problems. Obviously, the game not spawning the piece, if that is what happened, is a problem. But even then, the fact that you can just lose the puzzle pieces is also a problem that the game probably should have anticipated and maybe had some sort of a way to reset the puzzle pieces that the player could actually actively engage with instead of trying to reload the game. Something. There could have been ways to design this puzzle in such a way that it was not possible to softlock yourself by somehow accidentally losing one of the pieces in some sort of crevice somewhere in this building, but that is possibly what happened to me. And anyways, that was the last time I had to reload, thankfully. But that brings me on to the quote-unquote puzzle that just broke me and just made me oh god, really frustrated with this game. Let me set it up a little bit, okay? You take the role of a Mayan warrior who needs to defend his compatriot against Spanish invaders. So you need to destroy a cannon that will kill you both if it's left alone. Simple enough, right? The immediate thought I have is, okay, kill the cannoneer. There's a bow right next to it, so you just shoot him with a bow. Looks like a hard shot, but very possible. And so you try to shoot him from the perspective of the guy on the low ground, and it's impossible. There's an invisible wall in front of him, even if you make the shot. Okay, well, maybe the dude with a higher vantage point can shoot him. No, you can hit him, but just nothing happens. Okay, so that's not the solution, right? So you can find guns in other time periods, and I know that this is maybe me being dumb and trying to, like, brute force a solution, but look, it makes sense. If you can find a gun from another time period, that sure seems like a way to, no, you can't, that doesn't do anything. Okay, fine. So we can't shoot him, right? So we can, however, stick some explosives on an RC car. Now, normally, you would need to drive it to the destination, right, because you have a little controller for it. But there's a small tree in the way. So my solution, this is VR, right? You can actually interact with the environment. So you just throw the car right over that little branch and then drive it right up to the dude with the cannon, and you blow up the cannon, and it works. Of course it works, because that makes sense, right? Well, no, it doesn't. It doesn't exactly work. The game just softlocks the scene, since despite you having solved the puzzle and blown up the cannon, you didn't solve it in the right way. So the game just waits for a trigger that's never gonna happen. I lost it at this point. That is terrible design. It's illegal. This is illegal design. That's all I can describe it as. You can't design puzzles with solutions that work, but the game doesn't recognize it. Literally any other choice would have been better. Make creative problem solving work, or force me to use only the solution you intend. It isn't hard. Okay. I need to calm down. Look, this, together with the other technical issues, really soured my experience with this game and really just made me think very, very poorly of how this game was put together. I think that they just have so many problems in this game that so many other games have solved. It's almost like a game that was made by people who have never really played a video game before. It's frustrating. It is. Oh man, it got me. So look. Let's sum it up. Putting the lackluster atmosphere, light story, myriad technical issues, and antiquated puzzle design together, I had a pretty bad time with this game overall. You know that thing that people say, especially, like, I hear this a lot about Cyberpunk, where they're like, oh, it's a good fundamental design, but the execution wasn't great. Now, I personally disagree with that on Cyberpunk, and maybe I'll get to that one day, but the point is, this game is like the opposite of that argument. The foundation is terrible, and also, the execution is terrible. It has some nice moments, but I really do think, more than anything, Wanderer stands as a monument to why traditional point-and-click adventure games died, and hopefully, if we're lucky, as a warning for anyone who might consider making one, either in VR or in the traditional space, ever again.